Welcome back to another episode of Wealth Matters. I'm excited. This week, Amy Greene of Amy Greene Financial Returns. She's been on the podcast with us before, and so we continue to talk with Amy, who paid off $245,000 worth of debt in 2 years. We continue to talk with Amy, and this episode we talk all things personal financial plan. What is your personal financial plan? And we walk you through the steps of creating one and keeping up the motivation to actually work your plan. And it's an interesting conversation. Christmas comes up. I know that it's just here, the end of August, the beginning of September, but things about how to even plan for Christmas this year come up, and how to not let Christmas be a trap. In addition, we talk about insurance, the difference between term and whole and universal life, and how you might incorporate insurance into your financial planning strategy. So get ready for another great episode. We want to remind you, as always, that here at Wealth Matters for Financial Dominion podcast, we thoroughly believe in Thankful Thursdays and $5 Fridays. So if you're enjoying the content, feel free to just send us your $5 donation. Send us your $5 donation so that we can continue to bring you the best in personal financial literacy. And you can send that, if you want to use Cash App, to $PH Publishing. The Cash App handle is PH Publishing. Venmo is at Purpose House. PayPal is paypal.me/Purpose House. And then, of course, we're on Patreon as well. If you want an easy way to just send that $5 every month, you can do that at patreon.com/Purpose House. And for more information in general, you can go to purposehouse.net/wealth matters. All right, let's get into the episode. And I know that it will be motivating for you as it was for me. Let's jump in.
There we go.
And we are live. Okay, wonderful. I'm glad you see it. Sometimes there's a delay on my side. But welcome everybody back for another episode. I'm excited to have Amy Greene back with us again. I think it's great when people can come back and do a second episode, because oftentimes we run out of time. I mean, it's just so good when we get into the conversation, but the time slips away and you often don't have enough time to really get into everything that you want to say. So it's good that this episode, Amy Greene of Amy Greene Financial Coaching, is back. Many of you remember from the last time Amy was with us that Amy, I like to say, crushed $245,000 worth of debt in 2 years? Is that right?
Yes.
In 2 years. And so I think,
months. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that is phenomenal. And of course, you talked about that the last time you were on, but we definitely want you to share any insights, any other insights that you want to share. We want you to share those again. It never hurts to hear that kind of thing again.
Yeah.
Because I think we always have to keep our motivation up. And I think that hearing from folks like you who were successful in doing it is a great way to keep our motivation up. So I have just been really struck this year in my own financial journey. I've learned so much from folks like you and others that have been on the podcast. But this year, as we said, was a landmark year, from COVID-19 to all kinds of things, various and sundry things. Many records were set. And one of the records that was set this year was a record for consumer debt. And so on the brink of COVID, America in general was in more debt than she had ever been in terms of consumers. The individual consumer was in more debt than in any other time in the history of our nation, the entire history of our nation. And I'm sure that COVID was something that people were not expecting. There were side effects of COVID to debt. People didn't have to pay student loans. There was the CARES Act. People didn't have to pay student loans. So there were some consequences of COVID to consumer debt. But again, before COVID, people were in debt more than any other point in history in our nation, even more so than the 2008 financial crisis. So I wanted to have Amy back because this continues to be an issue for many people. And I want us to just hear your perspective on financial planning in general. Everybody, I believe, should have a personal financial plan. And people have it at various levels. Some people don't have a personal financial plan at all. But can you talk to us about, some steps that are involved in personal financial planning, essential things, just in general? I know for you, the budget is the first thing. So just talk us through, having a personal financial plan.
Absolutely. So, when we look at our personal finances, there's actually quite a few moving parts, and a lot of people just get overwhelmed. They just do not know where to start. So I always start people with, and it's funny, I always start people with the goals. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be 6 months from now, a year from now, even like way into the future? Think retirement years. What do you want to do, all the way through your life? And so what would you do if money wasn't a problem too? Like, where do you want to be? And, once we have a goal and kind of like this destination of, if I had no money issues, if money was not a problem, here's what we would do. It could be something as simple as we would just sleep better at night and I wouldn't fight with my spouse, or any of those. It could be that, or it could be we want to buy a vacation home. There's lots of different ideas out there for your goal. But, once we have that, we can start from there and build backwards. But the foundation, like you said, the first thing to do is to have a budget. And you need to live on less than you make. We're not Congress.
Okay, wait. Yeah. All right. See, I'm already going to slow you down because these are key points. These are really, really key points. I think that having the goal, and everybody says, okay, yeah, sure, I want more money, I want to get out of debt, whatever. But you really have to drill down on what that is. I think in order to keep your motivation and keep your inspiration, you can't just say, well, I want to get out of debt. No, right. I mean, you have to look at, as you said, you have to look at what that's going to mean for you. How is that going to change your life, or what kind of life is that going to create for you? And oftentimes it's too general. Oftentimes just saying, okay, I want to get out of debt. Of course, yes, it's great to want to get out of debt, but what else? Okay, once you get out of debt, what? Yeah. Do you want to be able to leave wealth for your children? Do you want to leave a certain dollar amount for your children? Do you want to, be able to retire early? Do you want to have a specific yearly income when you retire? One of the things that was amazing to me, Amy, is that we don't realize how little time we have. That to me was amazing in seeing, every year, if I wanted to keep my current lifestyle, how much money would I need to retire? And I think that's a question that people don't often look at, or they feel like, well, I have enough time, I don't need to do that. But how have you found with your clients that just seeing that if you just want to keep your current lifestyle and retire by, let's say, 65, this is how much money you're going to need? I mean, how important is that?
It is important to know what that end goal is for you for your retirement years. However, I'm working with clients that have no idea even where they're at, like financially. They can't tell me how much debt they have. They don't know what they have in retirement, if anything, or they have nothing. And so we're just trying to get them on a plan to manage the day-to-day stuff. So like you said, to go back to the goals, it's nice to say, I want to be out of debt, I want to be investing, I want to be giving, I want to be doing all these things, but let's make it specific and say, okay, well, how much debt do you have? And how quickly do you think you can get out of it? And can you speed that up? Can you have a goal to make it faster? Can you say by the end of, like, we have goals personally this year of paying X number of dollars towards our mortgage. And so are we going to hit that? Where are we? And every month we're looking at how much do we throw at the extra on the mortgage this month, and where are we towards our goal? And can we speed it up? Can we hit it faster? Can we do more? So we start to look at it that way. And so even breaking it down into debt, how quickly can you pay off $1,000 in debt, or how quickly can you pay off if you have $10,000 in credit card loans or something, right? How quickly can that happen? And so setting goals like that, where it's very specific and measurable, where you're saying in 6 months, I want to pay off $8,000 in debt. That's great. So how much is that per month? And starting to back into that. but yeah, having a, going back to the plan, like we need to have a plan, and the start of that plan is the budget, because that's going to tell you exactly where's your money going, like what's
Mm-hmm.
happening to it, and where do you want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because John Maxwell has that great quote of a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what we need to do, is be proactive in telling our money, we're going to put you into retirement, we're going to put you into saving up for a car, we're going to put you into kids college, so that we can be proactive at the things we know are coming, versus reactive and saying, oh my gosh, how do we bounce another check, versus being a step ahead.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you said you have people that just don't know where they're at financially, and I think that is also really, really key, because you can't address something until you face it or until you confront it, right? And
Right.
with us hitting that record in consumer debt this year, that tells me that a lot of people, like you said, don't even know what they're facing. I
Right.
mean, it's important to call and know what your payoff is, like, right? Just to get an
Yeah.
idea of
Yeah.
what you actually owe. And a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know, even for loans that they sat down, they signed the paperwork for, they agreed to the loan, they have no clue what they actually
Yeah.
owe.
Yeah. They've never added it up, and they're like, oh, I have loans, student loans from undergrad and grad school. And like, well, have you ever added it up? And they're like, no. And so sometimes I'll do it, and I'm like, so you have $175,000 total in debt, like cars and credit cards and student loans. And you see their faces change. They're like, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, we owe the IRS too. And you're like, well, there you go. So we just start, but what I like to do is, my job as a financial coach is to help we're going to dig all this stuff out. We're going to get it out from under the bed and out of the closet. So we're going to
Mm-hmm.
lay it on the table. We're just going to look at it, because there's no monsters when you turn on the light. So we're going to turn on the light onto all of this stuff in your financial world, and start to organize it and put it together and make sure that everything's working in the direction towards your goals.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So next steps, let's say, you have the goals, and they should be specific. They should be measurable. I mean, they should be clear. It shouldn't be pie
Yep.
in the sky, right?
Right.
Especially with
Right.
financial goals. And I think that the thing about that is that when you make the right kind of goal, you can muster some momentum, right?
Mm.
And then also, I think it's important to keep some inspiration. How do you keep inspiration with your clients? Like, sometimes you start out, you're gung ho. Okay, I'm gonna tackle this thing. I'm gonna tackle this debt, or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep that inspiration? Because life happens, right? Let's say you have an
Mm-hmm.
unexpected expense, and then
Right.
that just kind of knocks you off of your path. How do you keep inspiration with your financial goals?
Well, one of the things that I do with my clients is we always start our coaching sessions with victories. What is a win that you've had since our last session? Some people, it's just, what, I didn't use my credit card. And that's usually like one of the first ones. I'm like, well, you should cut them up. But they're like, no, we're just going to tuck them aside. And so they're like, I didn't swipe, I didn't use it. Or they stayed in budget. Or it could be, what, I was going to buy something and then I put it back, right? It could be anything that happens.
Okay.
Some of these small little wins. It could just be mindset, right? Like noticing that they're triggered to either shop, spend money, go out to eat, whatever the triggers are for them, and starting to say, well, how can I address this trigger in another way? Or when I'm stressed, can I just take a walk instead of like go eat, go to Starbucks and grab a whatever. So we start to dive into like, what else can they do to address those? So those are wins. Like it could just be something small, like staying within budget, or talking to their spouse. A lot of my clients are like, we never talked about money and we would just fight. And so now they're like, now we're having productive conversations and we're reviewing the budget together. So sometimes those wins are like that. So they might not necessarily be wins that are dollar driven. Like life happens. And like I have a client who, during our 6 months of working together, they did not pay off any debt, but they saved up their starter emergency fund, and they were able to like I think it was like the alternator in her van died. So they had to replace that using the emergency fund. They were able to fill their oil tank for their house for heat. And that was like $400. She's like, I used to stress every year. And she's like, I can just do it. We can just pay it. And then they got through Christmas with cash. They did not use any debt for Christmas. And so that alone was a huge win for that family based on where they were. And then they're set up to kind of proceed forward with getting out of debt. So, it just depends on where you are. But yeah, it's that. And I always tell my clients to really define their why. Why are we meeting together? Why are we doing this? And the desire has to be stronger than any excuse. And
That's
so
so key. Wow.
it's
Can
so
you say
key.
that again, please? The desire has to be stronger.
The desire has to be stronger than any of your excuses. So,
That's
and
really
we
good,
know,
Amy.
what is it? When desire comes, it is the tree of life. And
Mm-hmm.
so, for any goal that you have, even if you're farther along, like even if you're out of debt, like we are out of debt and we're paying down our mortgage. But the reason that we're paying down our mortgage so intensely is because we need a bigger house, or we would like a bigger house.
Okay.
So this is a very small house for a family of four. So we are, we are, we are cozy, and saying COVID made it very
Very
cozy.
intimate.
It's very, very intimate. So, I mean, we're content, we're so blessed to have a house. We have wonderful neighbors. Like there's a lot of good, but this is a goal that we have, is to get that next house. And so we look at real estate all the time. So we stay motivated in that this is a goal. This is what we want to achieve. And so I tell people to know their why.
Mm-hmm.
Your why should make you cry, right? This should be very powerful. And that's gonna blow you, help you push you through the tough times.
Oh, I love that. Your why should make you cry. I like that a lot. So now, two things that I want to ask. One about Christmas. I want to get back to that. But
Okay.
first, you said you want a bigger house, so you're paying down your mortgage aggressively. Now, what is going to be your approach to the next house? Are you going to do a 15-year? Are you going to buy a little less house than you can afford? Like, I mean, what?
Yeah.
So I'm asking the question to
Yeah.
kind of frame, what should someone's mindset be if they want to buy another house and stay on target with their financial goals?
Right. I think the problem that most Americans face is that we buy too much house. Even after 2008, banks will still approve you for way more than what you typically can afford, because they don't take into account that you have other expenses. So I typically recommend a 15-year fixed rate mortgage where the payment, which includes property taxes and insurance, is no more than 25, and I go up to 30. I live 30%. I live in New Jersey, so property taxes here are intense.
I'm sure.
So go up to 30% of your monthly take home pay. So your monthly take home pay is the income, the paychecks deposited into your checking account. So if you're making 10 grand a month, you can have a $2,500 to $3,000 mortgage payment. But if you're making less, it's less than that. So we just want to keep those numbers in mind, because I have there's people whose mortgage payments are 50% of their take home pay. And it's so hard to make any financial traction if that's the case. And that's on a 30-year fix. So geez, so now we've got too much house. So our goal is to definitely try to make those numbers work. Since this is what I teach, I'm trying to follow my own rules. Yeah.
Well, they often say teachers are the worst students, but we're not going to have that testimony.
No, not
so
no.
That's really good, really good practical information. So 30% of your take home. And one of the things that I like about what you said is that it is so true that if you are throwing 50% of your take home at a mortgage, then that leaves you with very little extra to save, to pay down debt, or to do the things that will actually help you to build wealth. And I think that with this American dream, we are so consumed that we got to have a nice house, we got to have a nice car, and car notes. I hate car notes, but they just work against us. But because of the media and this perception, we're throwing a lot of what we could be using to build wealth into a mortgage and into a car note. So I think that that's great. Great perspective that you shared. And the other thing you said I wanted to ask about was Christmas. You said one of your clients got through Christmas without credit. So now it's what, almost September.
Almost September.
Can you believe it? The year flew. It's almost September. So we have September, October, November, December. So 4 months. Yeah. Yeah, give or take 4 months. What can people do now to ensure that Christmas is different for them and not financially, not a financial trap?
Right. So I love sinking funds. So sinking funds are where you're just going to set money aside for a future purpose, and you decide how much you need, and you make a per month amount. And in your budget, you can set this up where it's just kind of like, it's almost like automated savings, where you say, so for Christmas, let's say you need $800 for Christmas. Just picking round numbers, that's $200 a month, including December. So you have to wait till December's income to have that extra $200, but that's $200 a month to go into this sinking fund for Christmas. So if you start in September and start saving $200, whether it's in an envelope or a jar or it's just in your bank account, as long as it's earmarked for Christmas and it doesn't get touched, now you'll have money for Christmas. And so that's exactly what I tell my clients to do. As we approach Christmas, we start to think of how can we fund Christmas. Some people do it year round. Personally, we do it when my husband gets his bonus. We just money goes right to a sinking fund savings account. Christmas is done. So everyone's got a different plan, but starting in September with your September budget, you can put aside money for Christmas.
September. Okay. And so would that just be a separate savings account? Would that?
It can be. So I have separate savings accounts for all of our sinking funds. So car repair and replace, we have home repair, we have Christmas, we have vacations. So obviously you're not going to have a lot of these if you're still paying off debt, because all extra money should go there. But for Christmas, yeah, you can open up a separate savings account, and just if you aren't disciplined enough to not touch it in your checking, or just to, move the money out of your main checking bank and put it in a separate bank where it's a little bit tougher to get to. But yeah, you can move it over, but just make sure you transfer it back when you actually need to start doing your shopping.
Yeah, I used to, when there was a tool that my bank used to have called a systematic CD, and I used to use that for Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it would cash out December 1st or so, and then I would just use that for Christmas. And I think that if people just kind of set it up, let it be automatic, then you can make sure you don't overspend for Christmas.
Right.
And also, I think having the conversation with your kids is important, that this is what the parameters are for Christmas. Maybe last Christmas you had more. This Christmas we're going to reprioritize or whatever, but you may need to have those conversations with your kids depending on their age as well. And I found that to be very, very helpful, just to help them reframe it. And that took pressure off of me as a parent, because a lot of times we overspend because there's that pressure as a parent, or or either you just don't realize that how much it's going to hurt you, but oftentimes we just want to give as parents. And I think we should bring our children into those conversations, and even, help them to plan as well. So
absolutely. And I think that your Christmas should have a budget. So you should list out, who do you buy for and how much do you plan to spend on each person? Because it can quickly spiral with your mother-in-law, right? Or somebody in your family that someone's going to get more than their allotted amount, and then now your budget gets blown. But I recommend that for each person in your list, that you budget out how much. That includes your kids, and even have money aside, holiday parties, if I don't know, COVID, but just little extras, the wrapping paper, the Christmas, etc. So there's a little bit of slush there, but having money set aside first keeps you in check. So that's important to have. Okay.
Yep, I agree. So having that goal, knowing your why, creating the budget. Did we talk about emergency fund? I don't know if we talked. Okay, you want to talk about emergency fund?
Yes. So this is the precursor to all of the future. This is the precursor to paying off debt and to stop going into debt. So I teach my clients to save $1,000, start emergency fund. I follow Ramsey's baby steps, and that $1,000 just gives a little cushion between you and life. So if your alternator goes in your minivan, you can go replace it and not worry about how much is, where that money is coming from to just fix it. And so it's not going to save you from a major emergency, but it's going to save you from the normal kind of everyday things that happen. If the kid breaks his arm and he goes to the ER and that bill is $500, now you have the $500 to just pay it. You're going to put it back and keep that $1,000 in there. But past that, after you're out of debt, now you can build it up to 3 to 6 months of your emergency fund. So imagine walking into a worldwide pandemic with 0 debt and 6. And so now you can walk through any kind of emergency, whether it's, just, your family or something going on with you in your life, or something that no one ever expected, a worldwide pandemic. You now can live, if anything happens to your job or anything goes on, you have money to you can pay your mortgage, your rent, you can buy food, you can just keep on living without, you have 6 months to worry. Now you have time to use some time there. So it's an insurance policy against you in life.
I agree. And I think maybe you've seen this with your clients. I'm sure you have, but just being able to see that money sit in a bank account is a confidence builder, right? It's
It is.
motivation, it's a confidence builder. And you actually see that if I stick to this, I can actually save,
Yeah.
because most Americans don't save.
Nope.
Most Americans do not save. And in fact, the average American saves less than 5% of their income.
Oh my gosh.
Less than 5%. That's the average.
Yeah. And 20, I think it's 28% goes to that like non-discretionary spending.
Mm-hmm.
So we're spending a lot on non-essentials. It's very
Non-essentials.
it's discretionary spending. So it's non-essential spending is like 28%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that emergency fund, just having, I mean, what does $1,000 break down to? 1,000 divided by 12? It's less than 100 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you could, I think people can find that money if they're diligent. But anyway, I think it's a motivator, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that it starts good habits. So I think that's
Yeah.
really, really essential.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you are a prime example of, the next step in financial planning, eliminating the toxic debt.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that is also where a lot of people struggle.
Mm-hmm.
With keeping up the motivation. Now, I have seen stories of people who sold their furniture, like literally you go in their house and they had no furniture. They were enjoying their dinner together on the floor, but they were also enjoying the fact that they were almost on the brink of being debt free.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys did it in less than 2 years, or almost 2 years.
Right.
Yeah. How did you keep your motivation up during those 2 years?
It's something that I think comes naturally to me. Like this is just I'm the nerd of the relationship. So this is something that motivates me. Numbers are very motivational. So I like to see the number going down. I like to make the big payments on the debt. So, it was definitely hard because halfway through our journey, I lost my job. And so that was kind of like this big monkey wrench that came into the middle of it.
Okay.
And, you know, the blessing on the other side of it was that we got to see that this plan works, that we were okay. We could live on less because we already were living on less.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I picked up like some like odd job things here and there, working at like a brewery to earn tips and stuff. So, you start to find creative ways to keep going. And, it was just like the motivation for me was not an issue, just because like this is what I want it to be. I listened to the Dave Ramsey podcast, so the debt-free screams were always motivational, and I can see into the future like what our potential is when the debt is gone. Like I can see what that looks like, and once we can, like, if we could just invest our car payments alone, let alone all the debt payments, what does that turn into in the future? So we start to look at it in terms of the potential possibility in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how did you keep your hubby motivated? Because I could relate to that. I'm naturally frugal. I just, You don't need that. Let's go home. We'll eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and we'll be happy. I'm naturally frugal, and I like to watch the numbers. Like I'm but
I'm like,
everybody,
turn off that light. Yeah.
That's me. That is absolutely me. That's absolutely me. But people don't always marry.
No.
People with that same money language. So how to keep your spouse motivated? I assume he has a different money language.
Oh, we do. I think I definitely approached this with him initially all wrong. In the sense that I just came home on fire. Like I found out who Dave Ramsey was and like read the book, and he somehow mentioned I should listen to podcasts. And so I did. And that's just the rabbit hole that then it was over. And so, it became like a thing where it was not always, happy roses, all the things. Mm-hmm. So there definitely were some points of contention. In understanding, how we both grew up. I grew up in a household where, you did turn the light off. And if you didn't, you got in trouble. And, oh, it's cold, put on a sweater. Like we didn't do all the summer vacations. I never went to Disney until I was 32. Like it just wasn't a thing. Where my husband grew up in the land of yes, and they went to Disney every year. Like it was just a different way of growing up.
Yeah.
And neither one is really right or wrong, because you can kind of go to the extremes. But there's a reason that we're together, because I'm going to keep my husband from spending everything, And he's not a super spender in like day-to-day stuff, but on experiences and trips, like he wants to go all out. So, I'm going to kind of ground him, and he's going to help me have fun, because I just want to spend time in the spreadsheet and be like you said, like PB&J, like I'm good. Let's just like, I'll wear the same shirt every day. It's okay. And so it's, I think, understanding where you both come from and how you make that work, you can work together to make that a thing. I've had to learn a lot of compromise. So, in terms of like, I could not be as intense on paying off debt as I wanted to, because I had to give him space to feel like he had some control of the budget and of our spending, and that we could do some things that were fun, maybe on a lesser scale, but there was still some breathing room for him. So it's that art of compromise, which is tough. It's a challenge, but it's something that's essential.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I could see how that could be a challenge, but I think finding that mutual motivation and, like you said, compromise. So maybe, you have to spend a little bit more on the trip than you want to. And, he has to spend a little bit less during the regular months where you're not, going to be on the trip. So that's good. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I also want to ask you, how does insurance come into this overall personal financial plan? What's the place of insurance? Because we haven't talked about that a whole lot.
Help protect you and a car insurance to protect us if there's a car accident, right? So it helps us not pay the medical bills and the collision costs, and we can get our car either replaced or whatever. So we have that for a reason. We have health insurance so that we don't have to pay out of pocket for medical needs. So it just helps to lower our overall expenditure on things. So, especially when they're catastrophic, when we start to talk big, think of insurance, I'm always recommending, one of the first things I go over with my clients, create the budget. I'm like, well, do you pay for life insurance? And, some people do and some people don't. We start to talk about, well, do you have life insurance, and where do you have it, and how much coverage do you have, and all of that. So my recommendation on life insurance, because there's so many options, there's just, lots and lots, is I recommend that you do not get it through your employer unless they give it to you, like that's fine. But the minute you leave, sometimes it's difficult to take it with you or take it to the next employer. And especially if your health has changed. So it can be tough to carry that. Recommend that my clients sign up for term life insurance. It's the cheapest way to go. And you want to get 10 to 12 times your annual income. And it sounds like so much money, right? So if you make $100 grand, oh my gosh, it's $1 million or 1.2. And so here's the reason. And it depends really on where you are in life. Like if you're old and retired and you've got a nest egg, you're probably okay. Or if your kids are out of the house and maybe you're both still working, and if one of you passes and the other's working, can you live off of your income, plus whatever is in your nest egg? So we start to look at like, where are you financially? But for families who have kids still at home, relying on each other's incomes, like I use myself as an example. So I'm stay-at-home mom first, part-time coach, and my husband's the breadwinner. So if anything happened to him, well, I'd either have to go find a job and now have to find childcare for my kids, right? And have to deal with that. Or his life insurance kicks in. I get this, let's just say that the $1 million policy comes to me. I invest that, and the market on average is 10 to 12%, on average, in rate of return. So now I'm getting 100 grand, which matches his salary. He was making 100 grand. Now I can actually get 100 grand off of his life insurance. So my life financially doesn't change. I don't have to run out and find daycare and find a job and hope I can make ends meet and stress and worry. We're going to be okay. I can choose to pay off the house first and then live off of maybe 80 grand, right? So I can kind of play with that number. And the same thing actually applies to the stay-at-home moms, or, vice versa. So if anyone, if you make 50 grand a year, you should have 500 to 600,000 on you. And we say 12% because you might eventually get an increase in your pay. But, if I were to pass, my husband now needs to find a nanny. or daycare, or the housekeeper and the chauffeur and all the
Mm-hmm.
things, to replace what I do. And so right now, like, if anything happened to me, he could go do that. And term life is so cheap. It's almost silly. You'll pay about 20% less than you do for a whole life or universal life or any of the cash value policies that are out there. And it's just insurance. It's set for like 20 years is typically what my clients purchased, 15, 20 years, because by then, after 20 years, the kids are grown, they're gone, they're
Mm-hmm.
not reliant on your income. You might have, hopefully you've become self-insured, you've got enough in of wealth built up in retirement accounts and other investments, and maybe your house is paid off by then, so that by then you don't necessarily need it. And so it becomes less of a need as you get older, and your wealth, your net worth starts to increase. And so,
what happens if you do the 20 years and you're still around?
Mm-hmm.
What happens after that?
Well, by then you should technically be what's called self-insured. So we got our policies when I was like 36, 37. So by 57, I mean, hopefully my house is paid for by then.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're investing, like we got out of debt and we were working the baby steps, if you will. So by 20 years, we should be in a place where the kids are grown and gone, and they can live off their own. They don't need to live off of our income. And if anything happened to one of us, like my husband doesn't have to replace me as a nanny anymore. So that's okay. We could choose to, at some point, get another smaller policy to kind of overlap if we want to. So you can do other things. You can look at getting an additional policy, but it's just, once you reach that stage, you really don't need it unless you want it.
Okay. And what's the difference between the term, the whole, and the universal?
So I don't know the difference between whole and universal. I just know that there's those cash value policies. So
Mm-hmm.
they build up, you pay a lot more for them, a heck of a lot more. And they build up, you pay it's like 20 times. So if you pay $5 for a term life policy, you'll pay $100 for a whole life or universal life policy. And so it builds up a savings portion inside of that insurance policy. So you have your face value will be a lot less. Let's say it's like 250,000, and you'll start to save up some money, but not for the first few years, because they take away fees, like there's commissions paid out, and they're kind of keeping some of it for fees and whatever else. But eventually you'll start to save up some money. The rate of return inside of that savings portion is not very great. They might sell it to you as if it is, but it really is not a huge rate of return.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can borrow from it, but you have to pay it back. But isn't it my money? And then when you die, typically the insurance company keeps the cash value and they pay out the face value, the 250,000. So it's been called the payday lender of the middle class. And so it's such an expensive product that I can usually convince my clients to sell it if they have it, and take the cash value and pay off debt and get themselves a term policy. And obviously don't cancel that one until the term is in place. But
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I recommend, that we just get rid of the whole life and then we use the cash value.
I think that
for good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's some really key things in there, because a lot of people don't even think about how those different scenarios might play out. Mm-hmm. So first point, life insurance should be a part of your personal financial planning. I mean, I think we can agree on that. Now, the kind of life insurance you get, right? You need to look at your situation. You're going to pay a lot less for term life. Mm-hmm. And then you need to be able to plan, like you said, like when you get there, you're probably not going to need it, right? Because you've been able to pay off the debt. You're going to be able to pay off your mortgage, and you've planned that way. But most people don't plan that way. They just buy a policy. And that's really what I want to get across, is that it should be part of your planning. There should be strategy. There should be thinking behind it. And you've been able to do that. So you know that when you get to a certain age, you're really not going to need it. Like, you're going to have a nest egg, right? Mm-hmm. But most people don't plan that way. They just say, okay, let me check the box and get some insurance. But we need to put a little bit more thought around it. I think is really, really key with what you're saying. And then also know what you're getting into, know the differences, know the different scenarios, know that you're going to pay more for whole life, know that all those different scenarios, whether that's going to benefit you or not.
Right.
So I think that insurance is something that people often overlook in terms of actually having some strategy and thinking behind it. They just check a box, they just buy a policy and don't really know what they're getting into.
Yeah, it's definitely, insurance can be very overwhelming and complicated, right? So we just want to take time to educate ourselves. Another insurance that I like to recommend is disability, long-term disability. You don't need short-term because you have your emergency fund. You can suffer through 6 months, but long-term, where if you're no longer able to work, now you have something where you're bringing in income because now you're permanently disabled, and we can't wait on the government to and that pay is pittance. So it's like, it's not even worth it almost. But that way you make sure that you're getting like typically it's 2/3. You can pay extra to get 100% of what your income was at the time. So at least that's going to protect you if anything happens to you and you can no longer work.
Yeah, and long-term disability isn't that expensive. It's not expensive at all.
And that's one where I suggest, if you can get it through work, do so, because it's not tied to your health. It's just, it's just tied to more chance of anything happening to you. But it's usually cheaper through work. It's usually much cheaper through your employer.
Yeah, I think that's great. And most people don't think about that. Now, would people classify Aflac as long-term?
I don't know. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Aflac is one of those ones I kind of consider gimmicky.
Okay, kind of tell us why.
Oh, I don't know if I can. It's one of those ones you pay a lot into, and you don't know if you're going to use it. And if you have an emergency fund saved up, and I think, is Aflac for short term or long term? I know it gives you some kind of cash while you're on disability, whether you have a baby or whatever, but you pay into it, and like, you're not ever going to get that money unless you actually get disabled, is what I understand. So I'm not truly versed in Aflac or those types of policies, but I always try to get my clients off of them.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But long-term disability insurance.
Long-term is good. Long-term is the replacement of your income, either at like 2/3 or full, or anywhere in that range. If anything happens to you, become permanently disabled and no longer able to work.
Okay. All right. But again, what I want to just kind of wrap around that is that it should be part of your plan, right?
Yes.
And you should have a strategy. You shouldn't just check a box and just buy any old kind of life insurance.
No.
You should have strategy behind the product that you choose. You should understand what you're doing. And then also long-term, I definitely concur. Long-term, it's not that expensive. And should anything happen, God forbid, you'll still have income. And that will not, worsen the situation that caused the need for it in the first place. Right. So really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. If anyone's concerned, like there are some, I actually recommend independent insurance brokers for insurance like this. They can cover auto and home and disability and all the things. They can cover life, and they can talk you through what are the options. And you have to go with your gut. Like if they're selling you a whole life policy or universal life policy as it's like the end all be all of this is going to make you wealthy, I would run. But if you feel like they're selling you stuff and it's like a hard sale, then you need to leave, right? It's one of those things that you can kind of feel it in your spirit that this isn't right. But a good insurance agent is going to talk you through the right insurances to have, which ones to avoid, what level of insurance to have, because you can have all different kinds of like auto insurance coverage, but what's the most appropriate? And sometimes you even need an umbrella policy. So when does that come into play? And all of there's a lot of questions to ask about insurance. So it's important to find out.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So ask the questions, get the understanding, don't rush, don't be pressured, but make sure you're making the right choice for your family and your situation.
Right.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right. So leave us with a few nuggets. Anything else you would want to share with the listening audience? Anything you're reading right now that you would recommend? Anything that you're doing to stay inspired in your financial goals and stay on track? Just give us a few tidbits before we go today.
Yeah, I just finished a book, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. So that's of course like just a life book. It's not necessarily financial. I like all kinds of nonfiction. So I've been reading Never Split the Difference, which is all about negotiation, which I find fascinating
Okay.
because it works in real life. The guy was an ex FBI hostage negotiator, but it works in real life. It works from like, can you get the upgraded seat on the airplane and all of the things. So it's a very fascinating.
It's called Never Split the Difference.
Never Split the Difference. It's
Okay.
good. And so yeah, I'm always we're inspired. Just my husband and I are now on this goal of we are feeling the tightness of our house, in the sense that like this is the office, and so my husband had to work from downstairs. He's got the two kids right now, and so we've kind of switched roles, but he's still on calls, and like this is where we start to say we need a bigger house. So like we're always motivated in that sense because we live with the challenges of a small house, and so that alone is helping us. We know that with COVID right now, housing prices are a little elevated in New Jersey as people move out of the city, and they're just snapping up properties. So we are okay to wait. We think that there will be a small, like a dip in the market sometime next year. The housing market is slow to follow other things in the economy. So we're going to wait for that to happen. All of the mortgage forbearances and all of these programs that have been designed to help people, miss a payment or so, but be okay. They're all going to come. There's going to be a catch-up period at some point. At some point, they're going to be over, and people are going to have to pay, and then there's going to be some foreclosures. So we're thinking that there's going to be some houses on sale, some discounts come up. So we were kind of just we're sitting still for that. So we just kind of keep our head in the game of that. We look at houses a lot and try to figure out like which area we want to move, if we move to a different town, that kind of thing. So we're just constantly motivated. I'm motivated by my clients just to see them dive in and take charge and really see them make the changes necessary to change their family tree when it comes to money. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. I never really thought about that, but that's a great little tidbit there about when the CARES Act is over for folks and they have to repay those things.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like,
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because unlike your student loan, like you can skip payments now, like you can just not make payments, and then at some point they'll just turn them back on. But your mortgage, if you've been on the forbearance plan and you skip 1, 2, 3, or however many of payments, now in that fourth month when that forbearance part is over, you're now going to have to pay 4 months of payments in order to stay current. And if you don't, I know that there's some protection for, they won't start foreclosure procedures now. They're going to delay that, but you might have some time to get caught up, but it's not going to last forever. And so that's where, like, I never tell people to take advantage of the mortgage forbearance. It's just setting you up for a more challenging time. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great things to think about. And the book is called Never Split the Difference.
Never Split the Difference. And of course,
then
Man's Search for Meaning.
The Search for Meaning. Okay,
great. Yeah.
And I'm sure that seeing your clients get those wins is really, really motivating.
Oh, it sure is.
Well.
It sure is. Yeah. It's great. And there's and I think even during COVID times, clients are just using some of these programs that are out there to their advantage. And so, there's a way to strategize through that, and how can we make that work for each client and depending on where they're at.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Is your client that was doing, she was like making 2,000 extra with the deliveries? Is she still doing that?
She's great. I haven't spoken to her in a couple of weeks, but she was making $1,200 a week working for Instacart. So she was doing it like 50, 60 hours a week. I know she was like, once she paid off all her debt, she was going to definitely like start taking like a day off a week. But she was very motivated. She's focused on her emergency fund, which is the next step. And so she's got plans, and she's looking forward to, she's looking into the future, if you will, of all the things. And so she was a rock star. She was great.
Yeah. She seemed like she was like really motivated. So
yeah.
Before we go, tell our listening audience where they can find you and find out more about what you're doing.
Absolutely. So I am on Facebook and Instagram at Amy Greene FC for financial coaching. And so you can find me there.
All right. Well, you guys go follow Amy, give her some likes, and check in more into what she's doing. We are all on this journey to empower you with financial literacy and get you where you can give generously and share good news and leave a legacy for your generations to come. All right. Thank you, Amy, for being with us
Yes.
again. Always enjoy
Thank
talking to
you.
you. Enjoy the conversation. And
Absolutely.
you keep up the good work. You're helping people and
Okay.
empowering people and changing their, yeah,
Yes.
you're
And so are
literally,
you. Yes. So
yeah.
are you. Yep.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank God for that. That's what we want. Thanks again,
Yes.
Amy, and thanks
All
everybody
right.
for tuning in.
My pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
Okay.